Hi folks, welcome to the first flipped lesson. This lesson is over angles and parallel lines. If you've not taken the pre-video survey, stop and take it now. It's located in the folder that you found this video. If you are ready and you've taken the survey, then have your notes out and let's get ready to work. So today in class we talked about angle pairs when a transversal is cutting two lines. So in this picture that would be transversal L. And it's cutting lines M and N. And I noticed that lines M and N are parallel because lines M and N both have these little arrow marks on them that show that those are parallel lines. So we're going to be talking about when a transversal cuts two parallel lines tonight. The corresponding angles postulate says that if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then each pair of corresponding angles are congruent. So here I have highlighted the corresponding angles, and I could say that angle 7 is congruent to angle 2 because angle 7 and angle 2 are both corresponding angles. I could say angle 1 is congruent to angle 6. I could say angle 8 is congruent to angle 4, and I could say that angle 3 is congruent to angle 5. All because this transversal L is cutting two parallel lines, which makes the corresponding angle pairs congruent. The next thing we want to talk about is the interior angles. So again, if we have a situation that two parallel lines are being cut by the transversal L, then each pair of alternate interior angles, as shown highlighted here, are going to also be congruent. So I can say that for my alternate interior angles, angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. And then I can also say that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. The other types of interior angles we have are same side interior angles. So that would be angles 1 and 2. And that would also be the angle pair, angle 3 and angle 4. So if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then each pair of consecutive or same side interior angles would be considered supplementary. Which means that if I were to take their measures, the definition of supplementary says that their measures would total to be 180 degrees. So I can say that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 would equal 180 degrees. Likewise, I could say that the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 is also equal to 180 degrees because the transversal is cutting two parallel lines and those two angles are same side interior angles. The next thing we want to talk about are the exterior angles. So that would be the angles that are outside, so on the outside of lines M and N. If lines M and N are parallel and they're being cut by that transversal, then each pair of alternate exterior angles, like angle 7 and angle 5 on alternate sides of the transversal and exterior to the parallel lines, those two angles would be considered congruent. So I can say that angle 7 is congruent to angle 5. And the other pair of alternate exterior angles would be 8 and 6. So I could say that angle 8 is congruent to angle 6. Whatever angle 8's measure would be the same thing as angle 6's measure. So for same side exterior angles, that the angles that are on the outside of line M and N, so that would be angle 7 and angle 6. We could also have a same side exterior angle pair of angle 8 and angle 5. Those are both on the right side of the transversal, but they're exterior to the parallel lines. They're on the outside. So if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then each pair of consecutive exterior angles or same side exterior angles, they are supplementary. Which by definition means that their measures will total 180 degrees. So I can say that the measure of angle 7 plus the measure of angle 6 will equal 180 degrees. And I can also say that the measure of angle 8 plus the measure of angle 5 will equal 180 degrees. So now I'd like you to take a moment and assume that the transversal is cutting a pair of parallel lines, which we can see by those arrow marks. And I'd like you at the bottom of your notes to go ahead and list the congruent and the supplementary angle pairs. I've got an answer bank there for you, and if you would like to add on more angle pairs that we've talked about in the last few class days, you're welcome to. So take a moment, pause the video, and write down a list of congruent and supplementary angle pairs. So in the next problem, it says that in the figure, the measure of angle 9 is 180 degrees, and the measure of angle 5 is 68 degrees, and I'm asked to find the measure of each angle that is asked for. So I need to go to my picture and I need to identify the transversals and the parallel lines. What I see in my picture is that I have these arrows here and here, which means that these are my parallel lines, and the transversals that are cutting them are line P and line Q. So line P and line Q, those are my transversals that I'm going to be referencing when I talk about being on the same side or being on alternate sides of the transversal. The next thing that I want to do is I want to take the information that's given to me and I want to put it in my diagram and use that information to find any new information that was not given to me. So what I'm going to do is take a color and I'm going to label all of my 80-degree angles. And the first one that's given is that the measure of angle 9 is 80 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and go to angle 9, and I'm going to say that this is 80 degrees. I'm going to use my parallel lines and my transversal to just look at this section of my picture, because that's where the transversal is cutting my two parallel lines. I can find some corresponding angles, so angle 1 and angle 9 are corresponding, and by the corresponding angle postulate, I can say that angle 1 is 80 degrees. I also know from previous classes that vertical angles are congruent, so angle 1 and angle 3 should both be 80 degrees, and angle 9 and angle 11 should both be 80 degrees. From here, I have some missing angle measures that are in the top part of that picture. For example, I know that angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair because they create line P. That means that they're supplementary and their sum should be 180 degrees. So 180 degrees minus angle 1's 80 degrees is 100 degrees. So together, angle 1 and angle 2 make 180. Vertical angles are congruent, so I'm going to use this to justify labeling angle 4. Angle 2 and angle 10 are corresponding, so they should also have the same measurement. And vertical angles with angle 10 would also be angle 12, so this should be also 100 degrees. The next thing I want to do is label angle 5 as 68 degrees, so here is 68 degrees. Using vertical angles, I can say that angle 7 is 68 degrees. And their corresponding angles on the right side would also be 68 degrees. So 13 is 68 degrees, and angle 15 is 68 degrees. And finally, with the same reasoning that I used to find the 100-degree angles on the top section, I can use that to find the angles on the bottom section. So 180 degrees minus 68 will give me 112, which means that the remaining angles that create linear pairs with the 68-degree angles are all 112 degrees. 112 degrees, 112 degrees, 112 degrees. So take a moment using your picture to fill in the measurements that are asked for. And once you fill in the measurements that are asked for, please justify with a postulate or theorem that you used. For example, I know that the measure of angle 1 is 80 degrees because I was told that angle 9 measures 80 degrees, and angle 1 and angle 9 are considered corresponding. And by the corresponding angle postulate, I know that those two should be congruent. So I would write corresponding angle postulate. Now, I want you to take a little bit of time to practice on the next 3 problems that you have. We'll discuss them tomorrow in class, but that does not mean that you should come in without having looked at them. So if you have any questions, please write them down and we'll talk tomorrow. Have a good night.